Hi everyone again. S- Let's see the agenda for today, guys. The agenda for today is understanding Active Directory. So we will be looking into Active Directory, the basics that what is in Active Directory, how it works, what are the things that we should know about Active Directory, some useful terminologies in Active Directories, and the components of Active Directories we will be looking into, right? So let's start with it, right? First thing, what is an Active Directory, guys? So Active Directory is a Microsoft product, right? It is created by Microsoft and it only runs on Windows, right? So in Windows Server, we use Active Directories. So Active Directory does what? Active Directory helps the IT teams to monitor various objects in the network. It will grant you access or the users the access. It will revoke the different user permissions. You can implement policies for smooth operations within your network, right? So what we can do, let's say we have an administrator, right? So administrator can do what? Administrator can create a group of users and he can give them some specific access permission to the directories on the server, right? So we have that thing in the Active Directory. Now, let's say if the network is growing, right? If the network, if the infrastructure and the network is growing, so it becomes difficult for the administrators to track all the users and their login details and what resources they are given. So all the details about the resources that we have given to those users and all the permissions that we have provided to those users. So Active Directory is used over there, right? It helps the administrators to manage all the things that I told you, the resources, right? So it helps to manage user provisioning processes, the security audits. You can give access to each other's account from a single location, and you can uh, organize the users logically into groups and subgroups and provide them access controls, right? So that's the thing, right? Now, in Active Directory, the data that we store is stored in the form of objects. Okay, so object is what, guys? As I said, the data is stored in the form of objects. Now, objects, we can understand the objects as a single element. Let's say I want to add a user. That user is an object. I want to create a new group. That group is an object, right? I want to add an application to it. That application is an object. And also, if I want to add a device, that device is also an object in the Active Directory, right? So object has its name and its attributes. Like, let's say we have a user, we want to add a user. So it can be a username. Let's say I want to add a username. So username can be a combination of name and the information associated with the user. So let's say the name of the user is Rajesh and he joined in 2022. So we can write like that, Rajesh 2022, right? Or if Rajesh works with the development team, so we can write it like this, Rajesh Dev, right? So that is how we can store the data inside Active Directories, and this data is called object. Now, the thing about Active Directories that we are going to talk about is what Active Directory is. We understood, right? The Active Directory, when we are talking about, so better representation of the network, can we put that in the benefits of Active Directory? That it provides you a clear picture of the network, right? right? So that centralized management, how we are doing that centralized management, guys. So active directory will allow an administrator to centrally manage the users and authorizations of those users, right? Like whatever the size of the network is, we don't worry about that. Why we are not worrying about that? Because the administrator who is managing the network, the admin, is getting a clear picture of the network, right? So that's what I mean by better representation of the network, right? So what we have is, when we are talking about single sign-on capabilities, so yeah, when a user has to memorize lots of passwords and usernames for various servers, right? That can become very difficult, right? Either you have to save it somewhere, and there are chances that can be hacked, right? So what active directory is giving you, it is giving you single sign on capability, right? So we have something, we have in active directories that we call domain controller, and domain controller can be added to the environment of your active directory, and then it gives you the single sign on capability, where the users can enter their username passwords on one server, and they can then access all the other servers without entering these credentials again and again, right? So that's what is single sign on, right? Because if, let's say, you want to access some server, but first you have to do what, you have to enter username and password over there. Then you want to access some other server that is not connected to active directory. Let's say there is no active directory, so again the next server, so the credentials will be different for the next server, right? Then again you have to enter some credentials over there. So this can be, this can become very difficult if you are into some work that needs the use of different servers, right? So that's why what we have is, we have single sign on, and that's why we have active directories which provide this capability to us, right? So that is your single sign on. Okay, now next benefit, anyone? The centralized management I can write, right? But we have uh, covered it. A trust relationship. Let's say we have two different domains, right? Uh, example1.com and example2.com, right? Now, in both of these, there will be a trust relationship. It is a logical link that is established between two domains, right? One domain will be called trusting domain, and other will be called trusted domain, right? So we have two domains, trusted and trusting, right? So when a trust relationship is there, the trusting domain will do what? Will have the logon authentication of the trusted domain, right? So let's say we have example1.com, right? So let me rewrite this, and we have abc.com, and we have def.com, right? So we have these two domains, right? So this is trusted, yeah, and this is trusting. So when you are logged in to this abc.com using the authentication, right, using your username and password authentication and all the credentials that you have entered, so you don't have to enter those credentials here, because if this abc.com allowed you to get inside, so this def.com will not allow, because this def.com is trusting the authentication of abc.com, right? So it will respect the authentication mechanism of abc.com, and he will say that, yeah, if he allowed this thing, so that this user might be the legit user, right? So we don't have to do the authentication again, right? So generally, what trusted domain contains? What are the things that are inside trusted domains? So generally it contains users, right? And trusting domains, the trusting domains contains the resources, right? So users from the trusted domain will be able to access resources in the trusting domain because users are trusted. Now, when we are talking about trust, guys, is trust of different types? Are there any subcategories in trust? So we can classify trust as transitive and non-transitive. And what can be these transitive and non-transitive trusts? So it simply means if there is domain A, abc.com, we have domain B, def.com, and we have domain C, ghi.com. Yeah. So just that's the thing. So if domain A trusts domain B and domain B trusts domain C, right? So then domain A will trust domain C. That is transitive trust. Now, what can be non-transitive trust? So in non-transitive, if domain A is trusting domain B and domain B is trusting domain C, so that does not mean that domain A will trust domain C, right? Now there are that one-way trust and two-way trust. So what are one-way and two-way trust? So we can say that in one-way trust, B trusts A, right? It is unidirectional authentication path, right? That is created between the domains. So if A trusts B, right? So users or B trust A, so users in A will be able to access the resources in B, but the users in B will not be able to access the resources in A, right? That will be one-way trust, right? Two-way trust means this: the the users inside domain 1 will be able to access the resources in domain 2, and the users in domain 2 will be able to access the resources in domain 1, right? So that is what, that is the one way and two-way trust. Now we were talking about the benefits, so this was something deep into benefits. So it was efficient management of trust relationships. So the way that we discussed about the trust, do you think active directories efficiently manage trust relationships? Now we have what we have, another thing, another benefit: improved scalability with OUs, organizational units. So when we are changing the size of something, or if my network size is changing or something, like to scale up or scale down some things, so we have a concept of organizational units in active directories. So what are organizational units? So it is a subdivision within an active directory. What you can place inside organizational units is you can place users, you can place either groups as well, right? It can be a group of groups, right? So you can place groups as well, you can place let's say devices as well, like devices will be your computers only. You can place those as well, and you can place other organizational units as well, right? So why you are creating organizational units, you are creating so that you can mirror your organizational business structure, right? So every domain can implement its own OU, right? So if your organization contains, let's say, many domains, like more than one or more than two domains, you can create OUs, and you can create the structures in each domain that are independent of the structures in other domains, right? And then if you want to, let's say, in your OUs, you can put the users, or you can put directly the devices, that these are the devices inside and what privileges these devices have, what they can access, and what access controls they have, right? So that thing you can do. So let's say, what I want inside my active directory, I have 50 devices, right? I want that all of those devices combinedly, I want Windows Defender should be working for them, right? So Windows Defender should be on, right? It should be working, right? So what I will do, I will create an organizational unit, basically, and inside that organizational unit I will put all those 50 devices. After putting all those 50 devices, I will, just by putting the rule once, I can enable or disable Windows Defender in all those 50 devices. So rather than doing the things 50 times, if there was no organizational unit that I can create, so rather than creating those things 50 times, or rather than creating those rules 50 times, I am using Active Directories, and that Active Directory is helping me in putting those rules for all the 50 devices in a single go. Can I put containers in place of organizational units? The name is itself confusing, right? If someone has worked with cloud a lot and they hear this word container, so they will get confused. So think of those people who are working with Azure Active Directories. They have containers and they have containers, so they might also get confused, right? So no problem in that. So containers are also applied in this place. So even Microsoft tells that in its, if you will read about the whole documentation about the Active Directories, so you will get that in place of organizational units you can use the containers, right? And again, though not those containers that we use in cloud, right? Great. Okay, so improved scalability, I said. So what we have is, we have, as I said, we have a concept inside Active Directories, a concept of our OUs, and to why we are doing that, to increase or to improve the scalability, right? So let's say a company has a huge department, right? Huge HR department. So there is an administrator who is managing the entire domain, right? So the company can create an organizational unit with the name HR, can they? Right? And all the users and all the user accounts and their computers related to that HR department can be moved into it, right? So the admin who will be responsible for this organizational unit to be given certain privileges, or you can say administrative rights, limited to this OU. So that admin will be managing this organizational unit only, right? So that is about the scalability in this. Now we have something with the name Kerberos protocol, or Kerberos, for that we use for authentication in Active Directories. Now the thing is, guys, when we are talking about this Active Directory and its protocol Kerberos, right? So let's say there is a user, so user enters his credentials. Yeah. Now Kerberos does what? It will grant him a TGT. TGT stands for ticket granting ticket. And what can be ticket granting ticket? So we have ticket granting system, right? Now, ticket granting system will provide the ticket granting ticket to the user, basically, right? Now, ticket granting ticket means we are that I'm being a user. So being a user, I'm getting a ticket, and using that ticket, I will wait for the another ticket, right? For getting another ticket. So ticket granting ticket it is, right? Now the user will do what? If user gets this ticket granting ticket, he will do what? The user will present this ticket granting ticket to other workstations or servers throughout the same domain, right? Or even uh, we can do what, as we discussed about the trust relationships between the domains. So in those trust relationships, what we can do in other domains, user can also show this ticket granting ticket, right? Now what happens is when we have like authentication server in between, so the ticket granting ticket is shown to that authentication server, and authentication server gives the user a service ticket, right? And then after getting a service ticket, user can present that service ticket to all the other devices in that domain, or whatever service that user is wants to access, right? Now the server will or whomsoever that person is showing the ticket, that device is showing the ticket, the server will that server will identify the ticket, and it will understand that this ticket is given by the trusted domain controller, and after authorization the user will get the permission, and that permission which he needs to complete his task, right? So that's how your service ticket and Kerberos works, right? In basic terms, in layman terms, right? Now, when we are again talking about, we have the topic Active Directories. So when we are talking about Active Directories, uh, do you guys know how it works basically? Apart from this ticket granting ticket system, where is the database present? Now, what we have is like you install the windows computer and all the systems or the work groups that are computers, and you add that domain, right? Add those devices to the domain, then you like all the in that environment includes the server system, workstations, servers, separate passwords and usernames, all that thing, right? Now we have what? We have active directories. So in active directories we can keep all the users, their devices, their usernames and password, all these things managed in a single place. And the information that is related to the active directories, its users, the groups, passwords, it is stored in active directory database, right? And inside active directory we have a file with the name ntds.dit file, right? Inside that file this whole database is saved. This is the database file of the Active Directory. NT Directory Services, right? NTDS stands for NT Directory Services, right? Now then it uses the Kerberos protocol for the authentication, and then it like Active Directory maintains the consistency amongst different domain controllers, and it is, we were talking about the entities dit. So this is the database file, and we can create, it is possible to create have multiple domain controllers in the environment. And large organizations basically use this thing like multiple domain controllers, because they have a different admins. So different all the domain controllers contain same information, and we can we can maintain the consistency over there, and it will implement the synchronization mechanism over there to ensure all domain controllers have the consistent data, right? So this is a bit about these things. Now we have what? We have some components inside Active Directory. We have domains, we have organizational units, we have trees, we have forests. These are the logical structures, and physical structures are sites, domain controllers. So first thing, domains. What are domains? Now, the domain in Active Directory, what is that? It is a service, right? And which has like logical group, we can say. So as it is a logical structure, so domain is what? It is logical group of objects, right? So logical group of objects that share common administration, right? Common security, what else? And replication settings as well. So what we have is, when we have, let's say, more than one domain controllers, right? So replication is what? Replication is the method by which we can transfer or update the Active Directory objects from one domain controller to other domain controller, right? So the connection between domain controllers are built on the basis of their location inside a forest and site, right? And site is what is like every site in Active Directory has one or more subnet, right? And it has like the range of different IP addresses which are associated with the site, right? So basically, replication, if we talk about, so we are transferring or updating the Active Directory objects in one domain controller to other domain controller, because as I said, we want uh, this thing like a centralized management we have, so we want consistency between the domain controllers, right? So that's why the thing is that we do the replication, right? So domain is a logical group of object can be your user, it can be a device, right? So it is a group of user or device who have a common administration, who attain common security, who has the common replication settings, right? So that is what, that is your, so domain controller is what, guys? It is kind of a server, right, which runs Active Directory domain services, and it uses the data that is stored inside Active Directory for user authentication and authorization, right? So we have uh, the domain controller. It is a server which runs Active Directory domain services and uses the data that is stored inside the Active Directory for users authentication and authorization. Not only that, it is also used for group management, right? We can also do what? We can also do policy administration, right? And additional more additional functions as well. right? So in organizations we have a multiple domain controller and on premises data centers or on cloud as well, but each domain controller in a domain maintains a copy of Active Directory database, and then they do what, they synchronize the data between uh, all like between themselves, like if there are two domain controllers or more than two domain controllers, right? So it will just synchronize the data between themselves, and for synchronizing the data between themselves, what they uses the replication for synchronizing the data, the Active Directory replication, right? AD replication, right? So that is your domain controller. Like there are lots of things. Active Directory is like, if I say the, so it is a very big and deep topic, and when you are teaching these kinds of things, so you remember lots of things, and everything just goes through your mind. So we have something with the name LDAP, right? So I have heard somewhere that the primary access protocol for Active Directory is LDAP, and I think LDAP stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. So that's how it works, right? And what basically LDAP is. So when we are talking about LDAP, LDAP is just a vendor neutral application protocol. Just remember that. Vendor neutral means does not depends on the vendor who is the vendor, right? So neutral application protocol, right? And it is used to maintain distributed directory information in organized manner. Let me write it. Distributed directory information in an organized manner. Yeah, you can also say organized manner as easy to query manner, right? So it means it allows you to keep directory of items and information about them, right? So directory, right? We have this word directory. Why we are using this directory over here? Because we have two words, like you might have heard about. In Windows we call the folders, right? We have folders, but in Linux we don't have folders, we have directories. As I said, in an organized manner. So when we are talking about directory itself means, like you might have seen, like in our childhood back, like 10, 15 years back or 20 years back, there were telephone directories which we used to have, which used to have all the numbers, phone numbers related to the police stations or many places, right? So those were called directories, telephone directory. Why we didn't call them telephone folders? Because they have all the things in an organized manner, right? If I'm looking for police station phone number, so all the police stations phone number will start from some place and it will end till some place, but there will be no other phone number present. It will all be all police station numbers, right? So that's why directories are organized, folders are not organized, right? Now LDAP is used to maintain distributed directory. Now we are talking about distributed directory. That directory is somewhat inorganized. It is organized, but in some place we can see it is not organized. So a lightweight directory access protocol, it is used to do that, right? And what happens is it saves the data uh, in way of records, right? So we have records, so it saves or it stores the data by records, which has some attributes, right? So records have some attributes, right? uh like record can be, you can say, if you are feeling tough to understand this, so let's take this as a database. So the attribute is the field inside the database, right? Record is the database, and the field inside the database are the records, or sorry, attributes, right? So record has itself an identifier, a unique identifier, and we call it distinguished name, right? So it has a distinguished name, right? So that is a bit about LDAP, right? Now, how does a person gains access to all those records that are there, right? So we have a what thing, let's say a session has started, right? So the client or the user is this, there is a user and he's binded to LDAP server, right? This is the server. So this is LDAP server. So the user is binded to the LDAP server, right? The default port for that is, like using directory system agent, we are binded to to the server, and the default port for that is port number 389, right? Now client then does what? The client send the operation request to the server, right? So it can be a request for the search, or it can be a compare request, right? So it sends the request to the server, and it asks for the particular set of information, right? The server then processes the query, and then it supplies a response, right? The client gets the response and unbinds itself, and then it processes the data, right? So that's how basically it works, right? In simple layman terms, right? So that's a bit about domains, domain controller, LDAP, and then we have organizational units. So we have discussed about the organizational units as well. So organizational units are there for organizing the groups, users, and devices, and every domain can have its own organizational unit. So, can we say tree is a collection of one or more domains? A domain tree is a collection of one or more domains that will share common namespace, right? So, if we have a domain that say that goes by the name uh, infosectrain.com, and we have something with the name hr.infosectrain.com. Yeah, so these two domains would be considered a part of domain which is again infosectrain.com, let's say, right? So these are the two domains that are considered a part of this domain, right? So this will be a tree, right? Like if I create something with the name example.com, and if I create that example.com after infosectrain.com is created, so that would be in a separate domain tree which will be example.com, right? Now the thing is that we have trees, so what will be forests? What thing we call forest? We have a forest, right? So forest is a collection of one or more domain trees, right? So inside like let's say the domain infosectrain.com that we have, this one, right? So we have this tree, and example.com we created, that could be the tree again, and these both can be a part of same forest, right? And like we have a domain tree, so domain tree, as I said, it can be a collection of one or more domains that can share common namespace, but forest cannot, right? Now, how you will name the forest? The forest will be named after the first domain that is created, right? So forest will be named after first domain, right? That is created in the forest, right? So if infosectrain.com was the first domain created, the forest will be automatically named infosectrain.com, right? And we can then add additional domains and all the uh, belongings to the infosectrain.com forest, right? So like this is the thing. Now we have sites, something with the name sites. What are sites in Active Directories? So we have what? We have Active Directory sites, right? Now what we have, when we use these Active Directory sites, we use these Active Directory sites for managing organizations that have the branches that are at different geographical locations, but they fall under same domain, right? So it is a solution to geographically manage your Active Directory network without changing any thing inside your logical structure of the environment, right? So these are your physical groupings of well connected IP subnets, and it is these are used to replicate among domain controllers, right? So why we are using replication? Because we have, let's say we have a bank, right? And bank has the branches all over the country, right? So in every city there are branches of that bank. So we are doing what? We are doing replication among different domain controllers, because in every branch of that bank there are domain controllers, different domain controllers present. And we want, let's say right now I'm sitting in some other city and tomorrow I'm moving to some other city, but I have to make some changes in my bank. So uh, I cannot come back to the city and then makes the changes inside in my account. So what will I do in those scenarios? I will just go to that bank, and those banks have the domain controllers, and those domain controllers are doing the replication of information. So the IP subnetting is done in the Active Directory sites, and when IP is subnetting is done, so in every subnet that particular information is replicated, and that's how we are maintaining the consistency over there. And every bank has your details, or every bank can get your details from the Active Directory, so that they can get access to your account, or if you want to just just deposit some money, or you want to withdraw some money, or you have to make any other changes. So all those changes will be applied directly in the Active Directory, and now you can have you don't have to go back to your main branch and make some changes like that, right? So that is why we use Active Directory sites, right? The common domain controller, but the common domain, they should be into
Yes, yes, yes.
same domain. And then
Okay,
we can create different domain controllers. So every branch of your organization will be having a separate domain controller, and then those domain controllers will be replicating uh, information like within themselves, and everyone will be having the same information, right? About the
okay,
users and everything, right? The accounts and
okay,
the
okay.
users and everything. So that's the thing.
Got it, got it.
So what we have is guys. we have this domain forest, right? And when we are talking about the domain controller, so I told that domain controller is a server that will process the request for authentication from the users, and then that users are trying to access the domain, right? And what this your tree and forest is, we have a tree with the name blue.com over here, right? So we have this tree, we have this whole tree, and these trees have a domain forest, right? So the first tree that was, or the first domain that was there in the forest, the domain forest will be named after it, right? So that is your domain forest, right? So that's the difference between both of those, right? So that's the thing. Now we have Active Directory domain services. What services fall under Active Directory domain services? We get the domain services basically, right? Because that's also the thing that you should know. And the lightweight directory services. Let me put this. What else? Certificate services. So all these services fall under your Active Directory domain services, and it comes with Windows Server, and it is designed to manage the client systems, right? So you can say that Active Directory domain services is the main service of Active Directory. It will be having the directory information. It will take care of the interaction between the user and domain when user will try to connect to a device or a server or any resource over the network. Active Directory domain services will check the login credentials and the access permissions given to the user. And we have like lots of things, right? So it will like we have Active Directory certificate services, which will create, share, and manage the certificates. And these certificates will enable the users to exchange information over the internet, right? So like we have digital certificates, so like that we have certificates inside that. And we have directory services, lightweight directory services. So uh, it can like the Active Directory lightweight directory services will just do what it will store the directory data, right, during the LDAP, and it will run lots of instances on a single server, right? Now, what LDAP protocol does? LDAP protocol stores the data related to objects in the directory services, right? Like your usernames can be there, your passwords can be there, and it will share them across the network, right? We also have the federation services. So when we were starting, so someone said the federation services and the benefits, right? So again, Federation Services uses the concept of single sign-on to validate the users, and then what it will do, it will you can say it will allow them to access multiple applications on different networks in a single session, right? So single line sign-on means you need to just only sign in once for each service, right? And we also have right management services. So the thing is, like right management services do what? It will protect your confidential data or information from unauthorized access. How it will do that? It will encrypt the whole information on the server, right? So it will do the encryption of the whole content on the server. So that's why unauthorized access is protected, right? So that's the thing. Now let me just see if I have a active directory handy with me. So now let me show you how it looks like if someone has not seen active directory. Yeah, so I have that handy, and so we have a Windows Server 2019. I have created Active Directory over here in 2019. I have named other Windows. This is the basic Windows 10. I have named it Windows 10.1 and 10.2. So these are the users that are there in your Active Directory, right? So these are the users. They are their own admin as well, and the user inside Windows 10.1 is also admin inside Windows 10.2, right? So that's how I have created it, and we have this Windows server which is doing all the things. So we have I have uh, this username, the domain. My domain name is Marvel, right? The other machine name is Spider-Man, or and the other one is Punisher. So I'm uh, like in I watched that movie, so that's why I've named it. And yeah, so let's start the server. Let me show you how server looks like. I will show you that this thing tomorrow as well, that how these things work. And we have this server. So this is the server manager, right? So I have the Active Directory certificate as well, right? The certificate services, so certificate service is also running, it is activated. We have Active Directory domain services, right? And if I go to the computer management over here, so I can see the all the things here, the services and the applications, right? Windows Server backup, the disk management, everything, right? And the shared folders are also there, right? And let's go back again. So you can see ADDS, we have Active Directory domain services, and we have Active Directory certificate services also running, right? Now this is our Active Directory, and if I want to see the users, so you can see that here what we have different users, right? So inside users we have a user administrator. If I double click on administrator, so I can see all the things, the environment, and the general things, the organization, and user logon name, right? Password never expires. I have done that, so we will be able to crack that, right? So, and organization, lots of things. Then Frank Castle is also one of the users, and the remote desktop services, if it is running, the local path I have not provided, so it's not running that. And the profile, the account information, the sessions, right? All the information, if you will see. So the inside computers we have two devices, Spider-Man and Punisher. So these are connected to my Windows Server and the Active Directory basically. So these are connected to the Active Directory and the domain controller. So if you will go to domain controller, so we have only single domain controller, and I have named it Hydra-DC, right? So this is the domain controller. We have groups. So all these are groups, but these groups are nothing, just we have created. And we also have a service running. So this was a spelling mistake, but yeah, it's a SQL service running inside my Active Directory for managing all the things and the database over there. right? So these are the things inside, and this is my marvel.local. This is my Windows Active Directory, right? The domain name. And if I go here, I can see the username Frank Castle, and I don't know if I know the password, but yeah, try it. Let's try. I think I got the right password, and yeah, it will log me in. So this is the Frank Castle, and this other machine is Peter Parker. So the user is Peter Parker on that machine, and this is the thing, right? So if you want to create a new Active Directory, just go to manage, add roles and features, right? And here you can do next and role based next. You will select the server pool and do next, and then Active Directory, like it's checked over here, right? So as you can see, it's here checked, but if you have not installed Active Directory, so it will not be checked, right? So you have to check that, do next, and then after that you will get the normal thing, like you can do next and .NET framework, it's not necessary. And yeah, it will be starting, it will install all the features, and then it will be installed. Then in the notifications you will get a lots of things, like some more configuration that you have to do, so you can do those configurations over there as well. And then you can use your Active Directory. Now in inside Active Directory you can just go to this domains and trust, and you can just go to uh, users in computers, and you can just right click over here, and you can just go to new, and you can go to new user, or you can just start a new organizational unit. You can name it anything, right? So don't protect it, okay. And I have just created this new thing, so all tasks, and you can do lots of things, right? So for computer you want to create something, so you can do that, but I don't want to do anything, so I'm deleting that organizational unit, right? So these are the things we have, these users. So for users I have not given any kind of service basically, but yeah, I have I want, if I want, so you can change the domain controller, you can go to all tasks, and you can see all the things like change domain controller, raise domain functional level. And from new you can just create a new group or new organizational unit or shared folder. And one more thing that I have done is we have this thing, right? So let me just go here. The thing that you can see over here is inside local disk C. I have created a folder with the name share, right? So this share folder is shared with everyone. So if I go to the properties and sharing, so this is shared. And if you want to share it, so the owner is this, and if I click on share, it will be shared with everyone, right? So I have shared this folder. So this is the shared folder of my Active Directory, the client side basically. And in this PC and PC2 as well, I have done the same thing. And then uh, you can see the things, right? So it's empty right now, but yeah, it's a shared folder. So why we have opened the shared folder? Because basically in Windows, we what kind of error or what kind of vulnerability we get the vulnerability in SMB share, right? The Samba service, that the sharing service that we have. So in that service, we get the vulnerability, right? So this is how our Active Directory is structured. And then after that, like, so what we have is for tomorrow, we have discussed about all the basics, like maximum all the basics of active directories. And now what we will be doing, we will be attacking the active directory. So that's why I showed you my active directory, that how it is structured, how I have created it. And now you guys can just go through the basics again once more, and you can just clear your basics. And then tomorrow we will be starting with the attacking part of the active directory. And when we will be talking about the attacking part of active directory, so then we will be doing all the things. So tomorrow we will be looking into some attacks in active directory and some more interesting things I have. So tomorrow we will be doing some hands-on in active directories, and we will keep it till here for today then, right?